Have you ever wondered why so many guys who carry single action army revolvers tend to keep their finger on the trigger all the time? Well, today I'm going to be breaking down exactly why that is. How's it going, guys, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Talk. My name is Chad and this is the Hopeful Homestead. And in this series of videos, I like to think I'm talking to all the husbands and dads out there that are just trying to make it through life, talk about all the hard things we have to deal with. And today we're talking about firearms again, and specifically talking to all you trolls out there, all you safety queens, safety Nazis, YouTube safety Nazis, whatever term you want to use that I've seen used on the internet, all you guys that are just so quick to jump and talk about my trigger discipline when I'm holding my single action army revolver and single action lever guns. In my last video, I got quite a few comments about how, you have terrible trigger discipline. You got that finger all over the trigger. You're being an unsafe husband and father to your family by having that, setting such a poor example for your trigger discipline, blah, 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 blah. And I thought I'd go ahead and make one video explaining exactly why I was holding my guns that way, why a lot of guys who carry single action army revolvers and lever guns hold these guns the same way, and why everyone who's complaining about this are idiots. Common sense seems to be not so common anymore. And common sense would tell you that if you knew anything about single action armies or lever actions, you would know that they operate entirely different from modern day semi-automatic rifles and pistols. And yes, you can go to the old adage of, if you gotta have discipline with your trigger finger across all firearms, because what if you make a mistake? What if you forget and you just suddenly pull the trigger on a striker fired Glock that you're randomly carrying one day? Like, if you're that incompetent with a firearm that you have to worry that delicately and carry your guns around like you're just so afraid of them, then maybe you shouldn't be carrying guns. I, for one, practice a ton with this revolver, with all of my single action revolvers, my lever guns, whether it's my mare's leg or my full-fledged rifles, lever action rifles. I know those guns better than the back of my own hand. They are what I use by far the most out here on my property, doing work on the homestead, and what I plan to use the most going forward to protect my family and protect this property from wildlife threats and two-legged threats. Yes, I have other firearms. I've got semi-auto rifles, I've got semi-auto pistols, I've got other stuff for more unique and different scenarios. But for the most part, my 45 Colt revolvers and lever guns are what are gonna be the mainstays for me here, for my family, for hunting and protecting and pest management, wildlife management, home defense, everything. And so for me, I'm very proficient and very knowledgeable in those guns. And I'm gonna give you a list of some of the reasons as to why it is I myself and a lot of other guys that carry these guns don't have trigger discipline practiced very well with these guns. All right, let's set this cup of coffee down and bring in the star of the show that everybody was freaking out about in the last video, my farm guns video, if you haven't seen that one already. Looky here. Oh man, look at that finger. That finger's off the trigger. Let me just hold the gun like this and show you what happens. Unless I have a really firm grip on this grip, if I lighten it up at all, that gun starts to slip. And in South Florida, your hands get sweaty being out here working on the property. So with sweaty hands and anything less than a super firm grip on this gun with this finger off the trigger and out of the trigger guard, that starts to slip forward. And if you're moving around and doing stuff, it's gonna become a problem. The weight and balance of these single action army revolvers is such that your finger inside the trigger guard is able to control the balance of the firearm more properly. And I keep my finger off the trigger, but pressed on the front of the trigger guard. I'm not pushing on the trigger all the time, but guess what? Oh my God. I know, I just completely traumatized some of you. But yes, this gun, the trigger is absolutely useless. And yes, I am not flagging anyone. I'm out here alone on a 21-acre property that's bumping up to a 22,000-acre wildlife preserve. There's nobody around. I'm here by myself. I am no danger to anybody, and this firearm can't go off. Yes, you can see it is loaded, but I don't carry revolvers or lever guns with a live round under the hammer or in the chamber, as I've discussed in other videos. And so, as a result, this gun is a dead gun right now. It doesn't matter what you do to that trigger, where you point it or nothing, it will not go off. It is impossible to go off unless you pull this hammer. With single action Army revolvers and also with lever guns, these guns designs are such that these triggers are tools to operate the firearm, both with obviously firing, but obviously loading, unloading, resetting the hammer, raising the hammer. You use the trigger to operate the function of the firearm. The hammer is the dangerous part of these guns. The hammer is what actually fires the weapon. So you reverse engineer your thought process with these guns so that I know I never keep one under the hammer for safety reasons, because this has a firing pin on the hammer and it would be resting directly on the primer of the live round that would be under the hammer. So as a result, I don't carry a live round under the hammer. It is carrying, this is called the cowboy load. It's got 5 rounds in a 6-shot revolver loaded up, ready to go. And as soon as you pull this hammer, the next round will come up and be ready to fire by releasing the hammer with the trigger. The trigger does nothing until you pull that hammer. Same thing with the lever gun. That trigger is going to do absolutely nothing until you use the lever to rack one into the chamber, because I also don't keep a live round in the chamber on those guns either. You rack one up into the chamber and then the hammer is cocked as a result of that lever action, and the trigger is then used to release the hammer. So you reverse engineer your thought process with these guns. These guns are hammer focused, not trigger focused. And I get the sentiment because modern guns have changed the way people think, because those guns are designed to have safeties and semi-auto function that once you rack one, they will keep firing. And so therefore the trigger is much more of a dangerous thing to be mindful of. And I get that. But common sense and anyone knowledge knows that these type of guns don't require that same type of practice. And honestly, as I was explaining before, my lever action gun does not have a pistol grip. It is a regular rifle style, old school style grip, where the grip is just part of the extension of the buttstock. And so as a result, holding the firearm is just more comfortable and easier to do when your finger is inside the trigger guard. And it doesn't matter because those guns won't function without the hammers being cocked. I am very secure in making sure that I'm never flagging anybody with the end of this barrel or the end of the barrel of my lever gun. I am very secure in always making sure there's never a live round under the hammer or in the chamber. Those are my lines of safety for me, because these guns don't have safeties. So that's my safety mechanism, making sure that I'm never flagging and never keeping a live round that's ready to fire without rolling through the action of that gun, pulling the hammer or rolling through the whole lever action of the lever rifle. That's my system I've set up with such ingrained habit that allows me to carry these and handle them safely, because, and however I see fit, because I am not at risk of a round going off. Now, to just reduce some of the anxiety here, I'm going to go ahead and unload this so I can show you rolling through the action. The function of this gun, in case you are not familiar with how a single action Army works. Here's the thing. If I'm never supposed to put my finger on the trigger until I'm ready to fire down range, it would be impossible to unload this firearm. Because in order to do that, I can't just keep it out here. I can't keep this finger here. First of all, if I keep my finger here, it's in the way of this loading gate that opens. It opens into the finger, so that doesn't work. And when you start doing this and you're trying to operate the hammer to be able to start releasing the cylinder to be able to load and unload it, now you're really messing with the ergonomics of this gun by not keeping your finger in the trigger guard. That keeps a firm purchase on it and allows the weight of the gun to rest on that extended finger so that you can operate the hammer and the side gate so that you're able to move around and unload or load the firearm. That's how this gun is designed. It's how it's ergonomically designed to function. So here we go. I've got my finger inside of there. I'm gonna 2-click, half cock, and then I'm going to now this, you see the cylinder is freely rotating, and right now the trigger still does nothing. This trigger is actually now completely unable to even move. It is locked up in place when this is in the 2nd click position. It will not fire. And what I do is you just keep it, you're still keeping the gun pointed in a safe direction. I am rotating the cylinder and using the ejector. You see here, the ejector right here, ejector rod pushes the rounds, pushes the casings that have been fired out one at a time, taking out each round, maintaining safe direction of the firearm, not pointing at anybody else. And I roll through and double check, nothing inside of here now. And side note, just look how glorious that 45 Colt is. Something about a 45 Colt round that just impresses you. It's just so big and heavy, I love it. But all right, now you got a firearm that is completely unloaded, completely useless and not dangerous. It's just a hunk of metal at this point. And now I would have to use my finger on the trigger to be able to operate the hammer, to be able to pull it all the way and then push on the trigger to release the hammer and then set it back down. And so that's how you operate a single action army. If you didn't know, that's how it worked. So I'm gonna go ahead and load this thing back up with the cowboy load. If you didn't know, the cowboy load is you put it on half cock and you at load one, skip a cylinder, then load the rest. And as a result, when you finish loading all of these, you close that side gate, you have to put your finger on the trigger again to be able to operate this into position. So you guys just don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about trigger discipline with these guns. Now I have to fully cock it and release that hammer by pushing on the trigger and setting the hammer down on the empty chamber that is the one that I skipped in the beginning by doing loading one, skipping one, then loading four. It naturally falls, the hammer will fall down on that empty chamber to be able to have, once again, a fully loaded but safe to handle firearm that is back in the position it was at the start of this video, to where it's only dangerous if you pull that hammer. I'm gonna put this back in the holster real quick, set it aside. Got worked up there talking about that, need some coffee. And so, in my final thoughts here, I'll leave you with this. From a common sense standpoint, during COVID, were you one of the kind of people that drove around with a mask on alone in your car? Were you the type of person that wandered the grocery stores alone with no one else in there, following the arrows of which direction you're supposed to walk down the aisles? Or did you just act like a normal, common sense, rational person and realize it's not busy in here right now, I can do whatever I want and go pick up what I need on whatever aisle I want without following the stupid arrows? Or I'm driving alone in my car right now, there's no reason to be wearing my mask, so I'm not going to wear my mask. You know, it's those kind of obvious things that are breaking the rules that everyone says you have to live by, but are obvious common sense situations where it's okay to bend the rules and not follow them. When you're sitting in a parked car after getting some food in the drive-thru and you go park your car and you want to be comfortable for a bit while you eat your food, do you sit there with your seatbelt on the whole time because you're in a car? Or do you take your seatbelt off and just sit there in a parked car eating your food? Because the same logic being applied to this trigger discipline rule would be applied to that, and saying that, well, you might forget to put your seatbelt back on, and so therefore you should keep it on at all times when you're in the vehicle, even if the car's off. It's like, well, no, common sense tells you that I'm a responsible person. I know my vehicle, I know I handle myself properly. I can go ahead and make sure that I'm putting my seatbelt on before I start driving that car. Just like I handle single action revolvers and lever guns differently than I handle non-single action revolvers and lever guns. I have very good trigger discipline when it comes to my Mini 14, when it comes to my Colt Python that is a double action trigger. I have various other firearms that are semi-automatic and double action, and I never touch the triggers on those guns because they are in a whole different class of guns that in my mind has become so ingrained that I follow trigger discipline with those because they're semi-automatic. If I know it's a semi-automatic gun or a double action gun, it is ingrained in me to know now I keep my finger off the trigger. Whereas these other guns that are designed differently and ergonomically designed so that you're supposed to really keep your finger inside that trigger guard to be able to handle the gun properly, I understand the difference. Because guess what? I'm not an idiot. And if you're too much of an idiot to be able to handle the difference in firearms, then maybe you shouldn't be carrying a firearm in the first place. But all right, that's gonna do it. I appreciate you watching all the way through. If you did, hit the like button and let me know in the comments below what you thought. I'm sure I'm gonna get lit up in the comments by all the safety queens out there on YouTube, and I welcome it, because guess what? That only helps this video show up to more people who have common sense. So thank you for that. But again, my name is Chad. This is the Hopeful Homestead. If you feel like sticking around, I got a video up here all about why I love revolvers and lever guns that goes in deeper on this subject. So go check that out if you want to stick around. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.